Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm joined with Marissa, and she's going to be chatting. We're going to be chatting a little bit about her journey and some things around just mental health and mental wellness, and some of her battles and what she's gone through with that, what she's learned, and as she's trying to fight the stigma that goes along with that. Um, Marissa, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're actually going to get things started off. We're going to watch a video that Marissa recorded with the organization End Stigma Change Lives. So you're going to see that right now.
I want to share my story because there's so much silence about it right now, because people are so afraid to share about what their story is, what they're going through. They think that other people are going to judge them and think less of them, but that's not the case at all. And so it is time where every single person who has a mental illness or struggles with anxiety or depression talks about it, because when you're talking about it, then it ends that stigma. So I have had OCD since I was 16 years old. That's when I was diagnosed with it. There were some disturbing thoughts and images that were going through my head, and I couldn't pinpoint why I was having those. And in order to release that buildup of thoughts, I had to say them. So we ended up going to see a psychologist, and he diagnosed me as having OCD. And then shortly after that, I met with a psychiatrist and was put on medication to help with the thoughts and just to slow or hush the thoughts. We're gonna jump about 10 years because during that time I was getting treatment and I was seeing my psychiatrist and things were going pretty well. But really what was the breaking point was when after I had gotten married in June of 2015, I had moved out to Arizona with my husband at that time in July. I was away from my family and my friends, and I started a new job, and everything was just so new that it took a toll on me mentally, but it also took a toll on me physically. And I just remember thinking, this is no way to live. This is everyone is better without me. My parents don't have time to hear me talking about what I'm struggling with. No one wants to hear me repeat these thoughts over and over and over again. My husband doesn't want to listen to it. I can't keep food down. No one understands what I'm going through. And then I had a thought, I just want to die. And I remember calling my mom. And I called my dad and I said, tell me why I should live, because I can't think of anything right now. I would be better off dead. And my mom said, you need to call the suicide hotline. And I said, no, I'm much better than that. I don't need help. She goes, no, you need to call it. And I said, no. And the next thing I knew, I hung up with her. The next thing I knew, the suicide hotline was on the other line with me. And they asked me some questions. Are you okay? Are you safe? And I just cried on the phone, and they said, you need to get to the hospital right now. And I was there for 2 weeks. And it was during that time in the hospital that I was able to get all the tools that I needed to get my medication adjusted. And I felt like everyone in there was family. And I didn't want to be there. I was there for 2 weeks, didn't want to be there, but I knew that I needed to, and I felt so safe. That's when I went to Rogers. And a couple days after I got home from the hospital, that I started in the partial hospitalization group at Rogers for the OCD program. And during that time, I was with so many others that went through, that had thoughts like I had, and we all went through this treatment together. And it was as if they understood what I was going through. I knew what they were going through, and they felt like family. For me personally, the stigma is that if I have a mental illness, that I am not good enough and that I'm a failure, because there are some things that I can't do that other people can. what I'm learning to do is to reframe my thoughts and saying, you know what? I have a mental illness, but I am so strong for being able to function with having an illness, and an illness that just doesn't last for a few days, that can last for a lifetime. And I get up every single day going in confidence that I am strong and I am a warrior.
Wow, Marissa, that's such a powerful video. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being willing to share with us as well. I have to ask, this is obviously a topic that's that you're super passionate about. What has made you want to share your story and get the kind of the word out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the reason why I've been wanting to share my story is because, as you guys know, mental health is something that's not talked about very much, especially within in the church. And so I'm so happy that the Ridge is putting on this series of Let's Talk About It, because there is a lot of stigma around mental health. And mental illness is something that I had struggled with ever since I was 16, with being diagnosed with OCD. And then just recently, actually, being diagnosed with ADHD and depression as well. And the reason why I want to bring awareness is because I want people to know that there is hope, that there is, they are strong for getting the help that they need, but it all points back to Christ and the desire that he wants us to, he wants to see us thrive, not and just really live out the calling that he has for our lives, but also knowing too that there are tools and resources that have that are impactful, whether it's therapy, whether it's medication, what have you, and he allows those things to be used to bring us closer to him.
Mm, that's really impactful and insightful. I love that. I wonder if you'll share, as you were going through treatment, or as you were kind of early on in your battle with mental health, um, or I don't know what the right phrasing for that is really. You can enlighten me. Um, did you experience that stigma? Did you feel that stigma in your own mind, um, about even talking about it? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I definitely felt that stigma. I felt that because I was a Christian, that I shouldn't have these thoughts or have these worries, because, it says in the Bible to not be anxious about anything. And so in my mind, because I was anxious, I felt like a bad person. And actually, when I had gone through a rough period a couple of years ago, I actually did have some friends that had shared with me at that time, well, you need to read your Bible more, you need to pray more. And I was doing those things. And I definitely believe in the power of God's word and in prayer. But the missing component was the fact that I needed extra or supplemental support in addition to what I was already doing.
Mm. So someone right now, they're watching this, um, and they've heard those things, or they're thinking those things, like they're not allowed to have these emotions, they're not allowed to feel this way or be in this place because they follow Jesus. What would you say to them?
I would say that we are all human, and God knows that. And there is nothing that surprises him. And he, I really believe that he places doctors, nurses, therapists into our lives. And also there's medication too, but like God is in control of all of that. And he understands that we are human, and he understands that we are fallen. And so just to encourage those that if you are facing those thoughts, just to remember the truth. And because the thing that I've learned throughout my journey is that with dealing with a mental illness, is that the devil will try whatever he can to create doubt, to create these negative thoughts. And when you have that power of the Holy Spirit and you're in the word and you're praying, it's like God's power just overtakes that, and you're able to um, listen to the truth.
I love the idea of replacing those lies, those false things with the truth. I think that's super powerful. I wonder, Marissa, if a lot of people that have these stigmas, they have these mindsets about these things, is just rooted in maybe they don't really fully understand what it is, what what it's like to experience that. Would you be willing to maybe share a little about what is it like in your experience when you feel that anxiety? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to feel the anxiety, the depression, OCD, with when you wrestle through those things?
Yeah. So anxiety and depression just kind of like go hand in hand. But for me, how it's manifested itself is that I would get a thought, and then that thought would bother me, and then it was like a hamster like running on a wheel in my mind. And so what I've had to do is I've been taught different tools with at Rogers Behavioral Health on how to take ownership, I guess, of those thoughts. Meaning like how to silence like those thoughts, but to like really tackle them. And what happens is that for me, when I was obsessed about something and that's all I could think about, and it would really disturb me, then my depression would go up, because I felt that there was something wrong with me. I felt that I was worthless, that I was a failure because I couldn't deal with these thoughts appropriately. So that's what it's looked like for me. And the tools that I've been taught at Rogers really helped learn how to tackle that anxiety and depression through different skills and resources.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that insight. You keep on going back to these tools, and I'm super curious, right? So, what are some of the tools you've learned? What are some of the low hanging fruit someone could do right now to really improve their mental health?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really grasped during the second time of being at Rogers is I utilize worksheets, and there's a website called therapistaid.com, and the worksheets aren't for everyone, and some of them are a little cheesy, but for me what helps is that I'm able to see the thoughts on paper, and I'm able to distinguish what is fact versus what is my interpretation of it, or what is untrue. And working through that has really, really helped. I've also been taught about mindfulness. Now, I think that there can be some stigma with mindfulness. When I first learned about mindfulness, I thought, oh my gosh, does that mean like someone is going to like hypnotize me? That's not the case at all. What it is it's being focusing on the moment and fully engage it. I think that in our society, there's so many things that are grabbing our attention that it's hard to keep our mind focused on something. And so there are different things that you can do for mindfulness, whether it's taking a mindful drive, or there's another tool that's called grounding. It's the 5-4-3-2-1 strategy. So it's like 5 things. Okay, what are 5 things that I see, 4 things that I hear, 3 things that I feel, 2 things that I smell, and 1 thing that I touch. So it's not like you're replacing God with some like voodoo or whatever. It's being in the moment and allowing yourself to control like those thoughts. So that's what's really helped me.
The 2 things I loved about what you said, Marissa. One is this idea that it's been helpful for you, and it might not be helpful for everyone, meaning that there's so many tools out there for people that you have to find something that you connect with.
Exactly.
Yeah. Second thing, and I also really appreciate just in being able to talk with you and hear your story a little bit, is that like it's a continual journey. You know, it's
Yes.
not this one time fix and then, oh, now I'm filled my mental health quota for the rest of my life. I'm good to go. Um, can you talk a little bit about, because I know you went in for, like you mentioned, second round of treatment. What went into that decision of, I think there's a four year gap between first and second round. Is that right? So
Yeah.
what went into that decision of, you know what, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of things that played into this decision. One of the things was COVID. That 2020 was just not our year. Although, looking back to, there are things that I'm grateful for. I also, one of the other things that I did is there was a job that I had left in May. And I had and it was my own choosing, because unfortunately the job that I had, it created a lot of pressure, and actually made my mental health a lot worse. And so I ended up leaving that position. And I started working for Children's Wisconsin in June. And I really had to trust God between not because I didn't have a job lined up after I had left my job in May. I didn't have a job lined up, and I was just really trusting God. I was like, okay, God, you know these details. So with all that being said, and then having some difficulties with friendships and the pain of the divorce that I went through a couple of years ago, everything just started to really, I guess, like bubble up inside of me. And the other thing too is that I wasn't really able to meet with my therapist back in May throughout the summer as much as I had wanted to. And so, with all of those different things, it bubbled up to the point where I had lost hope again. And I knew that something was wrong. And when I had the thought that I want to die, I knew that something needed to happen. And I had felt the Lord telling me for a while, go back to Rogers, go back to Rogers. But still, there's still that stigma that if you go back, let's say you go to treatment, you graduate from treatment, but then you go back, there's still that stigma, or can be that stigma of, well, why are they going back? That's they should be stronger than that. Well, the thing is that just by you realizing that you need help, that's strength. That's strength right there. And when I listened to God and I was like, okay, God, I will do what you ask, He just blessed me. And I am so, and it changed my life.
Mm. That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. We talked about like a lot about the stigma. We talked about like the misunderstandings people can have about that. I also wonder and think people might have some misunderstanding about what treatment looks like, because treatment, and it looks different for different people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit, maybe like remove some of the obstacles someone might have to receiving treatment because it's this unknown thing for them? What does treatment look like?
Yeah, I like that you said that treatment looks different for everyone. So with Rogers, I know I've mentioned that quite a few times, but there's group therapy within that, within Rogers, there's individual therapy. But there are so many places that are, I guess, a lot of websites that you can go to that talk about therapists. And it is a scary, it can be a scary journey, or just taking that first step, because so there are Christian counselors, and then there are also like counselors that don't necessarily say that they're Christian, but they could, they most definitely could be a Christian. So you first want to figure out, what kind of counselor are you looking for? Are you looking for a Christian counselor? Are you looking for, a counselor that helps you with, I don't know, just like a regular counselor, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that you need to find a counselor that feel, you feel most comfortable with. And it's okay if you go into that appointment and you don't necessarily get along with that counselor. You have that choice to say, you know what, I don't want to, I don't want to keep going to this counselor. Whatever you feel most comfortable, because this is your treatment. This is not their treatment. And if there's something that they say that you disagree with, like, tell them. So it's it's a trial and error. But once you kind of like figure out what you're looking for, then it gets a lot easier. I don't know if
That's
that
great.
answers the
No, no,
question.
no. I love the concept of, hey, just because you tried once and that counselor, it wasn't a great fit for you, doesn't mean you give up. You keep going, you find the right counselor for you, because there's so many options that really are out there.
Exactly.
Last question for you, Marissa. You mentioned in the video, you were at a place where you were thinking everyone is better without me. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that, because I know there's a lot of people feeling that too. And say someone's watching this, they're in that moment. What would you say to them?
Yeah. That question brings up a lot of different, it tugs at your heartstrings. And for those that are watching that have had that thought, first and foremost, I want you to know that you are so incredibly loved. You may not feel it, but you are. And most importantly is that God loves you so very much, and he has a plan for you. And just remember that no one can replace you ever. There's only one you, and you make the world a better place. And you, whether you're dealing with a mental illness, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, the fact that you are doing whatever you can each and every day makes you a warrior, makes you a superhero, because you are fighting a battle that many people, that you just can't see. But keep going. You've got this. But most importantly, God's got this. And you are walking on this journey to freedom. And God's right there with you. And he won't ever let you go.
That is such a powerful thought. All right. I have to ask one more question. I have to. All right. So sorry, I was almost letting you off the hook, but I'm gonna come back. Just because what you're saying made me think of this. Say there's somebody's watching this, and they have a friend that is going through this, and they can't relate because maybe they haven't felt that way before, but they want to be there to help their friend, their loved one, their spouse, whoever it is, their child, whoever it is. What are maybe some things that that they should know that would be helpful, that you could offer a perspective on that they wouldn't know normally?
Well, one of the things that I've realized is that the number one thing that you can do to help someone who's going through a difficult time is really saying, how can I help? Because that is offering a lot of compassion, and you're trying to kind of like walk in their shoes. But those were the how can I help? I had to count that 4 words. And it's amazing what those 4 words can do, because the last thing that you want is, like for me, for example, I didn't want someone to try to fix me. I needed to figure this out. And so when someone is going through a difficult time and someone else is trying to figure out how they can help them, so some of the warning signs are like isolation. or avoidance, or just like they are shutting down. And the most important thing for anyone who has a friend or a loved one who is struggling with anxiety or depression is just remember that it's not that that other person doesn't want to talk to you or anything like that. It's just they are trying to figure out what they're going through and trying to just figure out their, I guess, the mess, or I guess that. And then the best thing that you can do is saying, you know, how can I help? How can I walk along this journey with you? So I would say that that would be like the best thing to do.
That's great. That's a great reminder. The don't fix it mentality, that I'm going to listen, I'm going to be here with you, and whatever you need to let me know.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a good point. Well, Marissa, thank you so much for chatting with me. I know that I learned a ton. I loved hearing your story. I'm excited for other people to hear some more of it as well. So thank you.
Thank you.